Reborn again. This time I avoided every meeting with Alice. When she said she wouldn't be home for the holidays, I packed up and went back to the village alone. She helped Justin rent a place next door, so I moved out. She decided to work at the school, so I applied to a technical university in City A. In my previous life, even our children advised me to divorce her. Also, they could be buried together after a lifetime of struggles. Looking at the acceptance letter in my hand, I almost cried. Nobody knows I was reborn. At the last moment, I changed my school choice to the university in City A. Even my teacher was confused. Isn't your fiancé staying at the school? Can she wait if you go so far away for college? Thinking about Alice, I could see her young, graceful, and elegant self in my mind. Honestly, everyone thought I was reaching beyond my grasp with Alice. She was ambitious, beautiful, and now an officer at a military school. I was only someone she tolerated because of a childhood betrothal. I smiled, teacher, nowadays it's all about free love. Our betrothal is outdated, like something from the feudal era, no thanks. Maybe surprised by my realization, the teacher patted my shoulder, full of admiration. Leaving school, I followed the crowd back home. I didn't even go to college in my past life. Because in a few days, Alice and I were to marry, and soon after came kids, so my education stopped. And soon after staying at the school, Alice joined the military. We were worlds apart after that. She rose up the ranks quickly, and wherever she went, the troops, Justin, and our daughter followed. Me? I was stuck in my little corner, caring for elders and raising kids. Watched my own child grow up, drifting apart, moving closer to Alice. Later, when he married Justin's daughter, I found out only after the wedding. An old friend showed me a photo, my son serving tea with his wife, while Alice and Justin shared knowing smiles. Later on, my son would often urge me to divorce. He said, "Dad, Mom suffered all her life. If it weren't for you, she'd already be with my mother-in-law. You two don't match, why not let go?" Even my daughter-in-law refused to meet me. But what could I do? I wasn't willing to let it go. I wasn't willing to just stand by when I was caring for my paralyzed parents-in-law, while she was out flirting. I wasn't willing to let my sick child be alone when I walked miles without shoes for a doctor, while she was playing piano with another man, teaching someone else's kids. And I wasn't willing that, after sacrificing everything for family, they said we didn't match. Everyone asked why I didn't let go. But no, I refused. The hard work of my youth had left me worn, aged before my time. Even in death, I wanted them to suffer with me. After I died, who cared if they ended up together? I couldn't handle it anymore. I finally died after my son once again urged me to divorce. He spoke for ages, left in anger when I stayed silent. He didn't know that door wasn't shut before my heart attacked. I called him and he slammed the door without looking back. At that moment I regretted it. Why did I raise him? Why did I waste my life for his sake? But at least I was reborn, back before marrying Alice. Everything can still change. Back home, I hid the acceptance letter and started cooking. The house, a unit from Alice's workplace, had 2 rooms and a living room. While cooking, I circled the date I'd leave for college on the living room calendar with a red pen. I gazed dreamily at it. Soon, very soon, I would be free. As I finished cooking, Alice came back. Sure enough, Justin and his kid followed her. "Brother, sorry to bother you again." Justin was fair-skinned, with striking eyebrows and eyes, and his tan coat added a certain flair. The girl was used to visiting, seeing I'd cooked. She cheered and quickly served the food. Except none for me. When I came out of the kitchen, they were saying grace and looked like a happy family. But the food was just tasting, they spat it out. "Dad, it's too salty." I leaned on the kitchen door frame, watching Alice serve soup to them, not suspecting it too was too salty. Justin left crying. "I guess he isn't welcoming, I won't come again." Alice sent them off, returning with a frown. I ignored it, cooking fresh dishes. "Did you do it on purpose?" Alice seemed puzzled, then explained, "His wife asked me to look after them before she passed. Your cooking's great. The kid likes it." Seeing my silence, Alice sighed. "If you're unhappy, I won't invite them over again." The next day, after she left, I packed my bag, planning a village trip. Though our betrothal was set, our families exchanged tokens and birth signs. To truly end it, there must be community witnesses, avoiding later disputes. Packing up, I saw the past year's work, the bedding I secretly wove. Thinking it through, I bagged it up, taking the sets and new shoes to the corner pawn shop. Years worth of weaving sold for $30. Although I don't have much money, food and drinks at college are a big expense. Luckily, I can save up just enough. When I got home, I put a big X on today's date on the calendar. 20 more days. In 20 days, I can leave this place and start my new life. Alice came back late. The food I made wasn't touched. She casually explained, I ate at school. But from the smell of her white tea perfume, I knew she had eaten with Justin and his daughter, just so she wouldn't eat at home and make me uncomfortable. I quietly took care of the dishes and returned to my room. It was filled with high school books and test papers. There wasn't enough room, so many were in the living room. I tied up the books from my room and planned to clean up the living room when Alice was out tomorrow. Since I'm leaving, it isn't right for me to leave anything behind. While cleaning, I heard a knock on the door. I knew it was Alice. She's always polite and wouldn't step into my room without permission. What's up? I didn't want her to see me packing, so I asked. There was a pause. Then she said, I'm writing the marriage proposal. Can we set the date for the 9th of next month? That was the day we got married in my past life. I glanced at my packed bags and said casually, marriage is a big deal. I'll go back and check tomorrow. There was a long silence before I heard her footsteps leaving. I leaned against the bed, relieved. With her current status, she doesn't really need my family's permission to submit a marriage proposal. Since my parents passed when I was young, her family took me in because of our childhood betrothal. To everyone, I'm already Alice's husband, and this is just a formality. She's good-looking, has a great job, and treats me well. It's obvious to others and myself that my heart belongs to her. I owe her family a lot, but in my past life I spent a lifetime repaying that debt. I owe them nothing now. This life I want to follow my own path. Path without Alice. The next morning, I was surprised to see Alice had already made breakfast. My favorites, fried eggs, and 8 treasure porridge. In the 3 years I've been studying here, she rarely did that. I sat down quietly. The only sound was the occasional clink of the spoon against the bowl. I'll take a day off and go with you, Alice said, looking up suddenly. I was startled and instinctively shook my head. I'll drive you back. It's not safe for you to go alone, she said, frowning at me. I was about to refuse again when a little girl ran in from outside. Godmother. A tiny girl with pink bow ties in her hair dashed into Alice's embrace. What are you doing here, Lily? Where's your dad? Alice glanced outside instinctively. Lily looked at me, then whispered, Dad says Uncle doesn't like him, so he's scared to come. I looked silently at this girl who, in my past life, married my son but never appeared in my life. Even at 3, you could tell she'd grow into a beauty. No wonder my son idolized her and her dad, despite her being 4 years older. Alice rushed off with Lily, saying Justin was feeling unwell. She left in a hurry, without saying another word. I chuckled. Well, that settled it. No need to find an excuse to return alone. I grabbed a pen and crossed off another day on the calendar. 19 more days. I gathered the books and notes from my room and tied them up. After selling them, I left with the $13 to return to my village. Today's goal was to end the betrothal with Alice. Her family treated me well, but convincing them wasn't too hard. I just explained that Alice was about to soar to great heights, and we weren't right for each other anymore. The village's courtyard was quiet and dull. A fire burned nearby, mosquitoes hovering around it. I pressed tobacco leaves under a board and cut them finely with a knife. My uncle and aunt sat silently on the threshold. After a while, they sighed deeply, trying to persuade me with kind words. Henry, even if she has someone on her mind, you and she have an engagement. If she dares not marry, I'll sort her out. Your parents asked us to take care of you before they passed. And you, seeing my silence, they exchanged glances before saying, frustrated. Why are you so stubborn? Let's go to the committee. I silently followed them. The committee gave us a letter, and we exchanged our engagement token in front of the village elders. I sighed, supporting my elders as we walked home. I knew they meant well. Alice was considered a catch. Even her real parents couldn't understand why I insisted on breaking off the engagement. But I couldn't tell them. I couldn't say how tough my past life was where I ended up alone. The engagement was successfully canceled. My elders said I'd always be their son. I didn't mention attending college in City A, but I stayed with them for 2 weeks. They walked me to the village entrance when I left, urging me to see this as home and visit often. When I bought my bus ticket in town, I realized they slipped me $200. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Back home, I put 15 big red X's on the calendar. Just 4 days left. I was about to go to my room with my luggage when I heard the door open. Alice had just come back from work, and she had Justin and Lily with her. "You're back?" Alice seemed surprised to see me. Justin just nodded at me and then turned to enter my room. I frowned as he casually closed my bedroom door and left my belongings scattered in the living room. I looked at Alice. She paused as if remembering something. Cheng's place leaked from the rain a couple of days ago, so he's staying here for 2 days. I saw you weren't around, and you don't have much stuff, so I temporarily let him use your room. So, you just cleared my room out and let someone else use it without asking me? She paused and seeing I didn't respond, added, "Oh, and I moved your things to my room. You can stay with me temporarily." Alice opened her room door as she spoke. "By the way, where are your books from the room? Why is there so little?" I looked at the small bundle she placed on the bedside table and pursed my lips. "Whatever. The place is hers anyways. It doesn't really concern me what she does with it. Finished exams, the books are useless now, so I sold them," I explained flatly. Alice frowned. "Even after exams, you might need the books someday. Why sell them?" I pressed my lips together and said nothing. Seeing my silence, she changed the subject. "So, what did Mom and Dad say?" Alice took the bundle from my hands. After a pause, I said, "Someone checked the dates, and it's not a good time. We'll talk about it later." This was my plan with Uncle and Aunt, to use this excuse to delay things a bit. I'd explain everything to her before I left. Alice seemed unsuspecting and just muttered something about picking new dates before walking out again. She mentioned making dinner and suggested I rest since I just got back. I noticed the marriage report on her desk by the window. The only blank spot was the date. Before I could gather my thoughts and help with dinner, I heard the talking from outside. A deep male voice, a playful female one, and a child's giggles. I sat back down silently. Staying here in her house after breaking off the engagement seems improper, especially sharing a room. But with just 4 days left, there's no point in looking for a rental now. I guess I'll sleep on the living room floor after dinner. After a long day of travel, I planned to sleep early, but Justin was full of energy and worked out in the living room. And with Lily running in and out of Alice's room like it was a playground, I used the excuse of fetching water to leave with a basin. Once outside, I took a deep breath. "Hey Henry, you're back? Weren't you visiting your in-laws?" Mrs. Hua from next door joined me as we headed to the well, each carrying a basin. "Yeah, visited for a few days, just got back today." Mrs. Hua's husband is an accountant at the mine, and they live a pretty comfortable life. Every time they made dumplings or something, they'd bring me a bowl. We got along fine. She hesitated, glancing behind me before pulling me aside near the well to poke my forehead, saying, "How could you be so naive? Alice is not someone you bring noisy people home to. She's a catch. Bringing the likes of Justin home? Are you out of your mind?" After her lengthy rant, I learned Alice told everyone it was my idea to bring Justin and his child here, claiming I felt sorry for them after they'd been hit by a disaster. I laughed, realizing Alice just wanted me to absorb any backlash. But since I'm leaving soon, I didn't want any unnecessary drama, so I just smiled without saying much. As I headed back, Mrs. Hua kept urging me to kick such troubles out early and offered her help if needed. Despite her curiosity, she was kind. Back inside, the living room was empty. I grabbed my clothes and went to the bathroom, where I noticed unfamiliar male toiletries. My usual soap and towel were tossed into a corner bucket beside the trash can, replaced with 2 towels and shampoos. "Excuse me, bro, Lily needs the bathroom." I felt a deliberate bump, hitting my head on the door frame. Justin insisted, "Please let me through. You're in my way." While his voice was soft, his smug and dismissive attitude was clear. But I didn't budge. "Apologize," I said calmly. Justin was startled, not expecting me to confront him. Still, he had a clever daughter. Lily, never fond of me, ran up to shove me hard and cried, "You're bad. You're bad. You bullied my dad. Meanie." Alice rushed out at Lily's cries, comforting her as she scolded, "My fault. Lily just needed to pee urgently." Alice glanced disapprovingly at me but said nothing in front of Justin. Instead, she soothed Lily, saying, "Don't cry, sweetie. I'll have him apologize. Okay?" Carrying Lily back to the room, she promised her candy. Justin gave me a mocking look before following them into Alice's room. As the heart-wrenching cries from the kids in the room started to die down, I put on a straight face, finished my shower, and packed my stuff into a basin. When I went back to the room, Justin had already left with the kids. There was a box of colorful candies on the bedside table, clearly meant for a child. Alice paused her tidying up when she saw me. "Sit down." I looked at her and knew she wanted to talk. She'd probably tell me to be more caring towards kids and not hold things against them, maybe even suggest I apologize. I obediently sat down, took a piece of paper, dabbed at the wound on my forehead, and handed it to her. The red stain on the paper was obvious. Whatever Alice was going to say got stuck in her throat. Her face turned various shades of red and white, quite embarrassing. That night, I slept on the couch. I grabbed a blanket and opened the door. "Wait," Alice stopped me. "You can sleep inside, why go out?" She figured I was upset about earlier, sighed, and led me back. "Lily is just a child. Justin didn't mean to upset you. You're an adult. Don't be petty with a kid. You know guests are welcome here. I know you don't like Justin, but life's not easy for him, so don't be small-minded. Okay?" I sneered. "So you brought them back here and said it was my idea?" Alice stopped breathing for a moment, opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I laughed. "See? No matter how righteous you sound, you can't deceive yourself from the turmoil and petty thoughts inside. For the sake of the elders, I didn't want to ruin her career. But that's about it." That night, Alice slept on a mat in the living room. The next morning, I got up early, packed all my stuff, planning to find a hotel and come back for my luggage. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Alice had already made breakfast. As soon as Lily spotted me, she huffed and moved the breakfast closer to her and Justin. Alice came out with some eggs, smiled awkwardly when she saw me. "Awake? Come over, I made some eggs." Then she noticed Lily with the food and sheepishly said, "Lily, honey, share some with your uncle. Okay?" I ignored them and headed out. The only nearby hotel was just a block away. I booked the cheapest room for $21 for 3 nights. After paying, I bought some dumplings and Chinese donuts at a nearby breakfast spot. But when I got back, my packed belongings were scattered. Lily had ripped up my acceptance letter and was folding it into paper planes on the table. My head buzzed. "What are you doing?" I snatched the letter back, making Lily fall off the table in surprise. Her loud cries brought Justin rushing in from another room. "What are you doing? Who lets you bully Lily?" Justin gave me a shove, tenderly picking Lily up. I shook with anger, carefully unfolding the letter. "Me? Bully? Did you even see what you did? Who lets you touch my stuff? Get out of here." Justin stood up with Lily, glared coldly at me. "You're not married to Alice yet. You can't call the shots here." He headed to the door but paused to turn back. "Even if you were married, you wouldn't beat me." The door slammed shut. Justin always showed his hostility when Alice wasn't around. I used to be insecure and cowardly. He's good-looking, has a great job, basically a big deal in the ensemble. I always felt I couldn't measure up. But getting a second chance, I'm finally at peace. Why should I compare myself to him? To Alice, Justin will always be important. But apart from Alice, don't I have a life? I can go to college, contribute to building my country. I can step out, broaden my view, gain experience. The swampy situation here would just hold me back. After packing up everything once more, I put another big X on the calendar. I shouldered my bag and went to the hotel I booked. When I first came back to life, I thought about making a scene at Justin's workplace. He ruined my past life. There's a fire inside me that just won't cool down. But what good would that do? As long as Alice is around, even if Justin lost his job, she could still support him. It wouldn't really hurt him. As long as I care about the elder's kindness raising me, as long as I don't want to completely wreck Alice, Justin's safe. Anyway, it's just because Alice's got a wandering heart. Justin had lots of army buddies, yet no one else took special care of them, acting as Lily's godfather. So yeah, exactly. At the hotel, I started drafting a letter for Alice. If we set aside the mess after getting hitched, set aside her on and off with Justin, she did support me through high school, fed me, occasionally helped with my homework. That's enough for me to explain things between us. In the letter, I wrote that I'd called off the engagement and got accepted to another college. From now on, she and I would part ways, never to cross paths again. Halfway through writing, I heard a knock. Assuming it was room service, I opened the door to find Alice standing outside. She looked worn out, like she'd been running everywhere. Upon seeing me, she sighed in relief. Finally found you. Thank God you're okay. I had assumed she'd come to criticize me again. Okay. Don't be mad. Come home with me. Alice nudged her way in, trying to help pack my things. Quickly, I slipped my half-written letter under a book. Her eyes, however, landed on a silver bracelet in the bundle. Her expression shifted as she picked it up. How did you get this bracelet? I froze, regretting not having kept it hidden. 5 p.m. Lily was messing with my stuff, and a bell fell out. I fixed it. This bracelet is something from when we were engaged as kids. I brought it back last time. Alice got this weird look on her face. She was like, "How come you have that bracelet? Isn't it supposed to be with my mom?" I was trying to figure out what to say when she just laughed and said, "I get it. My mom must have asked you to bring it to me, right?" Then she put the bracelet back in the bundle. "Just leave it with you for now. We're getting married soon anyway, so what's mine is yours. You can keep it all together." I let out a sigh of relief, but my hand still rested on the bundle. Alice frowned. "What's wrong? Still mad?" Lily was wrong, but she's just a kid. Don't make a fuss. Do you even know how worried Justin was when you ran off? He came out looking for you at night and even scraped his knee. He's lying at home now. I don't get it. Lily's always so well behaved, but you and her clash every time you're back. Alice was about to keep talking but stopped when she saw my calm face. I suddenly smiled. This afternoon your daughter was going through my stuff, and I told her to get lost. But your Justin said I had no right to tell her that. He even said that even if I married you, I wouldn't win against him. I watched Alice's face slowly change. What do you mean my daughter? That's just my goddaughter. I ignored her and continued, you keep using caring as your excuse to get close to him. But if your comrades knew this is how you're caring for her husband, would they be cool with it in the grave? I laughed sarcastically, exposing Alice's little lies. Her face changed, and she seemed shaky. After a while, she managed to say, if you're not going back, then just stay here and reflect. I'll come back for you in a few days. Alice left in a rush. I never meant to hurt you. I'll file the marriage report when I get back. As her footsteps trailed off, I quietly shut the door. Ridiculous. It's like she thought filing a marriage report and marrying me was some huge favor. And I should be super grateful. The next day, I went to my teacher's place to get my train ticket. The teacher was worried I wouldn't get a seat, so he got one early for me and also asked some friends in City A to look after me a bit. I had lunch with my teacher and then picked up some local specialties in the afternoon to give to my college roommates. The last night, I got into bed early. I thought I'd be restless, filled with mixed feelings. But to my surprise, I fell asleep pretty quickly. The next morning, after dropping off a letter at the hotel's front desk, I checked out and headed to the train station with my luggage. The 2-day train ride was bumpy, and I just dozed on and off. Finally, I arrived at the school, feeling relieved. got my enrollment done, and now it was time to hit the books hard. In my past life, I didn't get this chance of going to college, so I treasured it a lot more now. When I wasn't eating or sleeping, I was either in class or at the library. By the time I got Alice's first letter, school had been in session for 3 months. I wasn't surprised she found me. A month ago, my teacher had already mentioned Alice visited her and knew I was in City A. So, when Alice's letter arrived, it wasn't a shock. She said she didn't agree with breaking off the engagement and that, in her heart, I was still her husband. She also said there was nothing between her and Justin, and she knew I didn't like him. She'd sent him away and wouldn't see him again. Said she'd wait for me to come back. With the letter was $100. I kept the letter, didn't reply, and didn't touch the money. College was tough. I thought about getting a part-time job despite having top grades and a scholarship. I was still struggling with living expenses each month. When my teacher found out, he gave me an earful and started sending $50 a month, saying it was a loan. He even cheekily added, "Don't worry, your teacher's wife knows and supports it." For some reason, tears just started flowing. In my last life, no matter how tough things got, I never cried. But now, I just broke down and cried my heart out. My roommates were even startled and came over to comfort me. After that cry, I got even more determined. Every month, Alice sent a letter and another $100. The last letter of the semester said how she knew I wouldn't want to come back. But she was coming to spend the new year with me. Alice didn't show. The letters stopped too. Later on, I found out from my teacher that Alice married Justin. My teacher wrote saying, "Things got a bit messy. She initially got a transfer request to join you, but someone reported her for being involved with another man. Couldn't find a victim since you'd left, so it was swept under the rug. That guy lost his job and she ended up marrying him." He added, "Right now I feel incredibly thankful for you. You're lucky. I knew I was lucky in this life. Lucky to have gone back to before filling out college applications. Lucky to have dodged the mess from my past life." It was a year later when I got another letter from Alice. Right at the start, she said, "I'm sorry." Then she admitted it was actually Justin who reported her. He knew Alice was applying for a transfer. Justin begged her to stay, but she refused. So Justin went off script. He gambled and won. He married Alice. Alice said that later, she finally figured out what those dates marked on my living room calendar meant. She had always thought they were the dates I hoped to marry her. I just chuckled and burned all the letters. As for the money Alice sent, I returned it all to my teacher to pass along. 2 years later, even before graduating, I threw myself into construction work. I dedicated my life to my country, not caring when I'd return. Alice's epilogue. I was shocked and furious after hearing Henry at the hotel that day. When I got home, I locked myself in for 3 days. I realized I had indeed made a mistake. The mistake was letting my heart wander while waiting for Henry to grow up. While helping Justin repeatedly, my heart had drifted away. Justin was understanding, and Lily's cheerful nature was infectious. I overlooked the fact that I had a fiancé. I did things that I was ashamed of. After 3 days, I knew I couldn't live without Henry. I went to the hotel, but it was too late. He was gone. He just left me. I asked a lot of people, but no one knew where he had gone. Finally, his teacher told me he went to City A. I was devastated. I thought about the silver bracelet that shouldn't have been in his bundle. I rushed home, but they said the engagement was off. I stumbled back to the house we lived in for 3 years. That night, I drank too much. Justin slipped in. Later, he saw my transfer application and made a scene. Then he lost his job. His family came to cause trouble, and I had no choice but to marry him. But gradually, friends started to distance themselves. I wrote letters to Henry, but he never replied. It was as if he left and vanished from my world. After marrying Justin, he kept a close eye on me. He often caused drama. My parents didn't like him either and always compared him to Henry. Justin seemed to change, becoming hysterical and neurotic. Whenever I had an opportunity to transfer, he ruined it by making a scene. He'd accuse me of wanting to ditch him to find my ex-fiancée. And every time, All I could do was smile bitterly in my heart. Henry probably finds the idea of seeing me now disgusting. As tightly as Justin watches me, I'm nothing to Henry. Eventually, while friends got promoted, I was stuck. Justin started calling me a failure. We had only Lily for a child. When Lily grew up, got married, and had kids, she didn't marry well. Her husband was abusive, a cheat, and a gambler. Justin worried about Lily daily, but he refused to let her divorce. After every fight, they'd take it out on me, saying how useless I was, asking why Justin married me. Lily resented me too, blaming me for not having a higher position to support her. I had no words in response. Later, Lily couldn't get divorced, ran away but was brought back, and ended up brutally beaten by her husband. I'm older now and can't help her. Lily ultimately took her life, and left behind a 6-year-old. We lost our daughter but had to raise our grandchild. Looking at Lily's child, I can't help but remember that one time. I seem to recall a young face next to me, looking at me with nothing but love. I often wonder, if only I hadn't gotten involved with Justin. If I'd ended up marrying Henry, would things be different? But when did I manage to lose him? I can't even remember. Looking back on my life, it was all so pointless.